Welcome to Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy, where love, life, and legacy meet in the moments that matter most. Every week, I will share sacred reflections of my 30-year marriage before Martin's passing, as well as our life now without him. May these reflections help us live with more weight, warmth, and wisdom. Martin was a letter carrier by profession, but a life carrier by purpose. So let's take a moment and let intentional intimacy speak. Hey friends, it's Paula here. Welcome to episode 25 of Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy. In the book, this is based on an entry about building memorials. And that entry is all about a Memorial Day surprise where it was actually in 2014. Memorial Day was a Sunday, Memorial Day weekend. And, we were coming from church, and Martin's like, "What do you want to do, today?" And I'm like, "Oh, we can just go home and relax, no big deal." And, it's kind of interesting that we had an unspoken um, marriage vow, that my feet would always touch sand at least once a year. And so Martin's like, "Babe, why don't we, just drive down to Ocean City and, walk on the beach a little bit and get some good food, and the boardwalk and all that." And I was like, "Aren't you tired?" I mean, we've been at church. You really feel like doing all that? And he was just like, "Well, yeah, let's do it. We have Monday off. And so let's just, be spontaneous and go down to Ocean City." He's like, "You just sit back and relax. I got everything. I'll drive and cover everything." And so that's what we did. We drove down. It was a totally spontaneous trip, unplanned, and we had a great time. Got some good food. When I go to Maryland, I'm getting my crab cakes and different things. Got some funnel cake and spent some time with the kids, and it was a really good time. And when I was writing the segment for the book, I remember kind of like just reflecting on Memorial Day, because of course Memorial Day is honoring those that ultimately gave their lives, for our country and for the freedoms that we get to enjoy. And so I wanted to reflect on that when I was writing this particular segment. And I just happened, not Montgomery, Max. My son Max happened to be close by, and I was just like, "Yeah, I'm, reflecting on Memorial Day." I was like, "Do you have any, Memorial Day memories?" And he, oddly enough, recalled the time that we went down to Ocean City. And he was just like, "Yeah," he's like, "it was really nice, and, it was spontaneous, and Dad just kind of like took the reins." And, he just had this whole recollection of our Memorial Day experience. And I think that made me think about what memorials are. They are about remembrance. They are all about sacrifice, and, the fact that he remembered that definitely played into my thoughts about memorials. And even bringing it forward, that was 2014, even bringing it forward to current day 2026, memorials are all about legacy, but they're also about remembering what has been modeled before, right? And so just recently I celebrated my birthday, and my kids were extremely supportive. If you know anything about me, birthdays are bittersweet in some regard. My mom passed away on my birthday in 2009. And so my husband was always committed to making sure that I honored my birthday. I mean, he did that before my mom passed, but especially once she passed away, he was, extremely diligent about making sure I acknowledged my birthday and making sure that I did something to celebrate life, which was her last and final words to me. And so it's interesting to watch my kids because that kind of happened on my birthday. So I'll share what happened on my birthday, and then I will reflect on the other side as to what I believe all of this means in the grand scheme of things. So it was my 56th birthday just the other day, and my bridge son, Montgomery, had already indicated, I'm coming home from Virginia to take you to dinner. Now, he had already was planning to go out of town that weekend because it's a holiday weekend. He was going to go and visit some friends. And, I'm like, well, you don't need to come home. Go ahead, take the Friday. Because my birthday was a Friday. Take the Friday and, just go ahead. He's like, no, I'm coming home to honor your birthday. And sure enough, that's what he did. And so I thought it was just the two of us going out to dinner. And so for dinner, my youngest son, Maxwell, had already gone back to school that Thursday because they had classes on that Friday. So he had wished me a happy birthday and, said, sorry, Mom, I can't be here for your birthday. I'm like, baby, I understand. You got to do what you got to do. School and duties and responsibilities call. And so, sure enough, we're at the restaurant with Montgomery and my daughter-in-law. And here comes Max. I'm like, what are you doing here? He's like, it's your birthday, Mom. And I'm like, what? So here he had already driven to school the day before. And then now this next day, he drives back 2 hours to make sure he's here to celebrate my birthday. And I think the fact of what Martin did that day in 2014 and what my children did just recently in 2026 ultimately gets to the essence of what memorials is all about. And so I'll reflect on that on the other side. Okay, so here's my reflection in all this. Memorials are something that are built, right? We honor our servicemen, and we did that, our servicemen and servicewomen. But then also, a key point in this story is the kind of unspoken vow that Martin and I had regarding my feet touching sand, and he honored that. I can honestly say every year of our marriage, at least once, my feet touched sand. And so that was very important that he honored his vows. But then also key in the story is the decision point. Even though Martin was tired, honoring his vows and honoring what he said he was going to do was significant. And so he knew he had a day of rest coming up the next day. And so he was willing to sacrifice in that moment to do something on behalf of his family. That is significant. And the fact that that memory lasted and that my son remembered it, I was writing Intentional Intimacy in 2021, and here my son is remembering something from 7 years before. That tells us that the sacrifices that we make, they ultimately have lasting impact. And then looking at the present day echo, my sons for my birthday were able to honor me and really to travel and be intentional in their behavior because of inheritance. Intentionality was modeled for them by their father. That level of sacrificing, um, you know, for someone else was modeled to them. That was a memorial of sorts because my husband, he's no longer here. But yet the actions and the things that he did are still echoing and still impacting in the earth. That is legacy. So like I said, memorials, they're not always built after someone's gone. My husband built that memorial even while he was alive when we went on that trip. So some memorials are built quietly while we're still living. Memorials are built on long drives when rest would have been easier, showing up perhaps when no one asked or expected you to, or in keeping vows that were never really written down, but were kind of unspoken. And so ultimately, what we model becomes what others remember. And what we repeat becomes what others inherit. So today, especially, I want to leave you with this question. If no one ever builds a monument for you, and there's no lasting or standing memorial for you, what will your everyday choices teach someone to remember? Because it's not about a statue, it's not about a stone, it's not about a physical memorial, it's about the emotional memorials that you're building. One moment, one encounter at a time. So, what type of memorials are you building, and what legacy will they build during your life and when you're no longer here? My sons were able to memorialize and build memorials because that was modeled for them by their father. What are you modeling? Something to think about in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead. Because ultimately, what you're building today will be remembered on many tomorrows. So take care. Hopefully, something I've said has shifted your energy and awakened your potential. Catch you next time on Martin Mondays. Have a great week. Martin Mondays continues on Tuesday with the Tuesday tea. Check it out and join me and take a sip. You know, Martin used to say a lot of things. Some were funny, some were wise, but one thing he often said was, wow. Wow. Just those three letters. It spoke volumes. It meant a lot. When he didn't know what to say, wow. When he was excited about something, wow. When he was confused, perhaps, or even frustrated, he said, wow. And you know, he's still saying wow. Through this bracelet, he's still saying wow because he's still saying, may your whole life prove that God is good. And so in closing, that's my hope for you this week. May you have wow moments as you too are living out legacy. Live in the wow. Live in the reality of knowing that your whole life is good. Live in the heartbeat of Martin Mondays and intentional intimacy. May that anchor you in this week as you build legacy, one wow, one moment at a time. See you next week.